Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
This episode is brought to you by Polestar. There's only one true way to experience the all-electric luxury SUV Polestar 3, and that's to take a test drive. It can go from 0 to 60 in as little as 4.8 seconds with the dynamic handling of a sports car. But to truly understand how it commands the road, you need to be behind the wheel. Up to 350 miles of range, the 3D surround sound system by Bowers & Wilkins. It's all something you have to experience to believe. So book your test drive for Polestar 3 today at polestar.com.
Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, your weekly look at conservation and sporting community news happening across the nation and on the Hill. Thanks for tuning in. This is the TSV Roundup. Welcome in, everybody, to this week's edition of the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, your weekly look at conservation news from around the nation for the week of July 9th, 2025. This week brought to you by Bass Pro Shops, Richard Childress Racing, and Ducks Unlimited. Thank you all for your support of this program. Well, it's been an eventful week since we've week or so since we've last talked. And Ben, we were off for the 4th of July week, and holy smokes, we got a lot going on from the big beautiful bill being passed, and the public land provision stripped. Our own Taylor Schmidt's being promoted to senior vice president. We'll cover that this week. And we have breaking news out of both Pennsylvania and Connecticut. Both governors there, Governor Lamont in Connecticut, Governor Shapiro in Pennsylvania, signing repeals of Sunday hunting restrictions. These are monumental, huge deals for Sunday hunting, and ones that CSF has been working on for decades. Likely we'll be covering these in depth, the Sunday hunting next week's show, but want to let you know, as this show drops today on July 9th, Sunday hunting being signed in real time in Pennsylvania. And just the other night, Governor Lamont did the very same thing in Connecticut. So we thank our legislative sportsmen's caucuses in Pennsylvania and Connecticut. We thank the leadership there on the ground, in-state partners, as well as both governors for their signature and rolling back these antiquated laws. Great stuff all around. Now, Connecticut, it is a repeal of Sunday hunting on private land. So still some restrictions, but definitely a huge chipping away there in the Nutmeg state. And this is a full repeal in Pennsylvania on Sunday hunting completely. Our feature podcast that drops tomorrow, we will have Director Smith from the PGC on talking about what that means going forward for seasons and bag limits, and hope to have a representative on the program from Connecticut as well to talk more in depth about what that means in Connecticut. But for this week, we're welcoming in Christian Ragosta, who happened to work very hard on that Connecticut Sunday hunting bill. But this week, we're talking about unfortunate news in Rhode Island. The assault weapons ban that's been passed. That is our lead story this week, and we will get to Christian here in a moment. As I alluded to, another article, CSF promotes Taylor Schmidt to senior vice president. You all know Taylor very well. 2025 Oregon legislature adjourns. Conserving the gobble, how Great Plains states are responding to falling turkey numbers. And finally, we wrap things up an all call for dedicated conservation funding in Tennessee. Obviously, so much more this week in the catch up here, but let's welcome in Christian. Christian, congratulations first on the huge win and all the hard work you did in Connecticut for that breaking news. And then, unfortunately, we're going to talk about Rhode Island's misstep here, but I'll let you comment on Connecticut, and then we can roll into Rhode Island.
Sure. Thanks, Fred. First off, we have so many great partners from the legislature in our caucus, Sportsmen's Caucus, as well as just hunters and recreational shooters that came out of the woodwork to do their best to work with the legislator. This went through many different phases of changing, and we got to where we are And as you said, we're very proud of where we got. It's not the full repeal, but we do have it for private land, which is the vast majority of hunting lands in Connecticut. So huge win for us. The fight's obviously not over. We're going to continue on as we go, but again, just hats off to great legislators who gave it their all to get to this point. We couldn't have done it without our Sportsmen's Caucus for sure.
No doubt. That said, let us take the unfortunate segue next door to Rhode Island. You wrote an article on the assault weapons ban being signed by the governor there. Uh, Talk about the process, how we got here, and then what this means going forward for the folks at Rhode Island.
Yeah, this was unfortunate. It seems like Rhode Island wanted to be the state du jour, the next state to join the assault weapons ban motif that's been going on. Unfortunately, we had Massachusetts last year. Rhode Island just decided to jump back on. This again was a painstaking process from the get-go. They've tried to have an assault weapons ban passed for years. They just haven't had the juice or the will to do it. This year, they had a lot of sponsors. The governor, this was a very key part of the governor's plan. He actually put it in his budget, which is absurd that you'd put an assault weapons ban in your state budget. That's how much it meant to him. Like he really wanted to get this done.
Mhm.
So contending with a trifecta state government, which means all three four parts of the government, the both chambers and the governors held by one political party. That's a lot of political capital and power from coming from the governor, and he wanted to make this happen. So in the very beginning, we had the bills come up in the regular process. They go to committee. They're going to be on hearings. But they kind of got shut down where they moved it to be held for study for a later date, which unfortunately a lot of people thought that was a win. That okay, they're not going to pass anything. It's held for study.
Which
It was
we previously reported on earlier in the session.
that is correct. Yes. So that happened there, and it came back, and we were concerned it was coming back. Some of our partners were concerned, as they rightly should be, because it did. And all of a sudden, it got shoved in about the last week of their session. We thought that there was going to be a fight in the Senate where it was going to be a tie vote in the committee hearing, but again, it just was allowed to get through. The Senate leadership definitely has a lot of power, even though the new Senate leader is an FFL himself. The Senate president, she wanted it to happen as well. However, it got heavily, heavily changed. And when I say that is the largest and most egregious component of this was a registration concept. So they wanted everyone to register their firearm. Um,
And I just wanna jump in there and saying that, right? There's a lot of egregious stuff, but to put that, above the rest really highlights just how crappy this bill is. Continue, please, sorry.
you got it. So the registration component, you had 1 year to register your firearm that had a very kind of capricious way of one feature set of what makes something a quote unquote assault rifle or shotgun. I mean, this was a detachable magazine with any feature on it that they could come up with. They even put grenade launcher on there, which I think we joked about last time I was on here. It's crazy. And it got they took out the registration component, which we can talk about a little bit later. And the governor signed it the day it passed. I mean, again, this was on his board. I mean, this was
Mhm.
something the governor wanted. I think NSSF did a great job reporting on it as well, but they didn't even realize the governor had signed it the exact same day as it passed. I mean, this was something that was a priority for them, and unfortunately, the folks of Rhode Island are going to suffer for it. And our friends at the Department of Environmental Management, they understand the concept and the impact it will have on conservation funding. And I think that's the untold story that we always fight for, and that's gonna be to the detriment of conservation in Rhode Island, because recreational shooters will kinda be handcuffed at this point.
Mhm. Yeah. And then, even going back to last session, there was a mandate from the governor's office to do this very thing. Obviously, it didn't happen then, but here we are today with unfortunate passage signing of this. Go through a couple of the air finger quote less egregious items that did stay in. With the registration removed.
So this, does not impact possession, so that's kind of the only kind of silver lining, I guess, of this legislation that we can see. It impacts the transfer or purchase of firearms. So you can still sell it to your FFL, but they cannot sell it to anybody in Rhode Island after July 1st, 2026. It has to be an out-of-state FFL um, um, or person that they're allowed to sell to, which again, interstate commerce, they'd have to go through an FFL. Um, but you as an individual, you can't give your firearm to somebody. You can't buy a new one as of July 1st, 2026. A lot of the common one features we were mentioning, thumb hole stock, which has become very popular with I think some of the shotguns they use for like turkey hunting and whatnot is for more stability. Even a pistol grip. So modern sporting rifles are absolutely on the chopping block. Even if you have a barrel shroud, which covers completely covers the barrel, so you don't burn your hand after you shot the gun a couple of times, and you only have to shoot a gun 5, 6 times before it becomes hot. You
Yeah,
need that
well, it's
protection, so
that one when I was reading it and going over your article as well in prep, I just like the thumb hole stock and just like the pistol grip, like, what is it doing other than okay, so if you can't hold it, I guess you can't shoot it? Is that their aim? Like, what a weird, just right up there with the 203 grenade launcher, just whatever. Okay, I had to say it. Go ahead.
no, I appreciate it. It's I can mention a couple other things like telescoping stock that allows you to fit the firearm to your person. Everyone's a different size. Again, these are features to make the firearm more safe to handle. As you said, like you don't want to burn your hand, like that's silly. Like you can't even wrap your head around like why is that something they target? I'm sure they're targeting it because it's a cosmetic feature you see on those scary quote unquote black guns
That's right.
that we hear about. But it's a modern sporting rifle. It's been used for shoot 60, 70 years at this point. I have friends who hunt with them. Younger hunters have been using them out in the West, I know, with great success. It's a fantastic firearm to get to know and use. Um, but yeah, these are features that make the firearm safer and more easily used by the user. And the problem is that many of these legislators always think of a firearm being used for criminal purposes, not for the purpose of law-abiding citizens who will try to hunt or recreational shoot. And this is coming from the safest state in the nation when it comes to gun violence. I mean, Johns Hopkins University came out with a study that flat out said that using CDC data, in 2022, Rhode Island is the safest state in the union when it comes to gun violence. But for some reason, these legislators had made it a priority to ban whatever they could. They've done magazine bans, so you can't have anything over a 10-round magazine capacity. They're no longer allowing 18-year-olds to buy ammunition or firearms. You have to be the age of 21 in Rhode Island. They don't want people walking around with a loaded rifle or shotgun in public. Talking to our caucus members, they don't know where it's going to stop because they ask these same questions to their colleagues on the other side of like, you keep asking for gun control. When's it going to stop? Like, when's enough enough? And year after year after year, there's something new. So this is just the newest one, and they still don't see an end. Like they still haven't said they're done.
As you're talking, I'm still kind of fixated on the barrel shroud there. Everyone assumes that's for AR style, again, poorly labeled military grade weapons, which they are not, but that's how the general public likes to, visualize them. I can't help but think of like your modern 30-30s that have become very popular with the passage of straight wall cartridges being legal and built up in urban areas where you can't use rifles. And they come with that same feature because of the rail system that allows the user to either put a sight system on, a red dot system, and that's a lever action firearm. Like, where does that fall in? Is all of a sudden that illegal? Like, what are we doing here?
It's Rhode Island. They do fixate on the detachable magazines. So I mean, and also like cylinder magazines and shotguns. So they are getting much more. They're getting interesting in how they're trying to pick out certain stuff, but they are fixated on this barrel shroud language, the grenade launcher, the bayonet lug.
Paying
Like
that log, right?
yeah.
Right.
My favorite joke when I was working in New York was when was the last time you saw a drive-by bayoneting? It's just it's so anachronistic, but it's just language that they keep reusing state by state. And unfortunately, how many states are we up to now that's got an assault weapons ban? I think we're hitting the preteens, like we're getting up there in number of states, and they're just copying language without using, common sense of like what people use firearms for, how they're used, what's even legal on the federal level. Again, you can't have a grenade launcher unless you have, very special accreditation from the federal government. So Again, I think it's just an overreach, but it's again, this was a political ploy. This was the governor wanted it. In fact, if you read the press releases coming out of Providence, no one was happy with this bill. The anti-gunners hated this bill because they didn't get the registration component. The firearm-friendly people obviously didn't like it because it's taking away our Second Amendment rights. The only person that was happy about this was the governor and his team because he got this passed under his watch, so he can wave the flag in the safest state in the union about how they're curbing gun violence instead of focusing on access for hunters and sportsmen and women who are paying for conservation and helping out in the state. It drives me wild how this was just so obviously a politically hack move.
Yeah, no doubt. Um, in wrapping up here, what are the next steps? What is the crystal ball telling you, and what you're hearing from our partners there in Providence and elsewhere in the state?
Sure. So unfortunately, we kind of have to look on kind of the national level with the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, this year they refused to listen to the magazine capacity bill coming out of Rhode Island, which that a lot of states were kind of waiting to see because this is happening in a lot of states. The magazine capacity bill. Um, we're seeing Supreme Court justices like Kagan talk about how these modern sporting rifles are in common use in America when they talked about the Mexico bill when they tried to sue, I believe it's Smith and Wesson, for cartels buying firearms, and they want to sue firearm manufacturers out of through across the border from Mexico, which got taken down. But even Supreme Court justices who have not been considered the most firearm friendly are now calling these commonly owned firearms.
Mhm.
So at some point, it's going to come down to the Supreme Court decision. The problem is that we even have potentially pro firearm Supreme Court justices who are not ready to hear stuff yet. So we are looking at it probably a time frame of at least a year because this law does not come into effect until July 1st, 2026. So it needs to be challenged once somebody's kind of breached what has happened when it comes to the lower court stuff. So we're just waiting for the courts to kind of iron this out. And unfortunately, Rhode Island, the way it's kind of built, it does look like the Supreme Court is going to have the final word here. Talked to several of our members from our Sportsmen's Caucus of Rhode Island. That's kind of their expectation as well. Just like our friends in Massachusetts, they're going to fight the individual components of this. They're going to try to make it as good as they can
Mhm.
moving forward. But as a whole, this is going to take a judicial response to really stop it, Rhode Island, which is unfortunate because coming from New York, it takes time and a lot of money to get those court cases going. So my heart goes out to the people of Rhode Island. But we're there to try to mitigate as much as we can, educate as best we can. But they do have good friends in our caucus there. They have good friends in the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. Uh, we get it. But again, it looks like courts are going to be our best choice, especially since the governor was so happy and proud this got passed, even if it wasn't the best for either side.
Christian, one last question. And I don't mean to put you on the spot here because it doesn't address specifically address it in your article, but implication for non-resident hunters, is this going to be like Chapter 135 in Massachusetts that will affect non-residents coming in to hunt, or would they be subject to the in-state restrictions?
Yeah, just like carrying a firearm into a state like New York, like your concealed carry doesn't is not permitted there, even though your state permits it. If that state does not, you're not allowed to do it. So whereas Massachusetts was trying to do its best to say we still want out of state hunters because there's a lot of them that come to Massachusetts. Um, just they decided we're going to choose what implements you can have. Rhode Island, as this has passed as of July 1st, 2026, you cannot have a modern sporting firearm, which I think is a great term because now shotguns are being looped in there, certain pistols are being looped in there. So I think modern sporting firearm is a better name for what we're talking about because it's not the quote unquote scary black gun that everyone worries about. This is firearms that are being used for competition shooting, recreational shooting, and even some sportsmen use shotguns that would be considered a quote unquote assault weapon now because they just have a tube that holds more rounds in it. It's but yeah, non-residents are absolutely impacted by this. They did not leave a loophole in Rhode Island.
So it just drives home the point, you're going into these states as a non-resident hunter. It's so imperative to be up on the new regulations, new laws, because maybe the last time you were there, things have drastically changed. especially in the two states here we're talking about, in Rhode Island and Massachusetts. But well, look, it is unfortunate news in a news cycle where we have a lot of good news. Unfortunately, this one's just really bad. So, I don't think it spoils the apple cart, but, it's unfortunate we got a report on it, but no doubt, there will be follow-up to this in the coming, year, and, we look forward to that reporting from you and obviously your leadership on the ground there in Rhode Island and doing what you can do with our partners. So, great reporting. Thanks for your efforts on this. It was a complete uphill battle that, we knew, was not gonna go our way at the start, but, you got a pile of dog poo here, and maybe it wasn't as stinky as it could have been. We'll just put it that way, and we'll leave it there. Christian, thanks so much for your hard work and congratulations. We'll leave it on a good note with the solid effort and the win there in Connecticut. I know
Thank you for
our
every help.
organization and the people of Connecticut are proud of that effort, and tip of the cap to you, sir.
Thanks, Fred. Appreciate it.
All right, we'll catch up next time. Thanks, Christian. All right, my thanks to Christian for coming in and reporting on that. Like I said, unfortunate bit of news, but still were able to end it on a good note with Connecticut. Um, Continuing on with the news, but before we do, a gentle reminder: if you've not already subscribed, followed on your favorite podcast platform, please do so now. Again, as long as you're not driving, pull that phone out, take the 30 seconds or so to go to iTunes, Spotify, hit the follow button if you're willing. And we appreciate the 5-star review at the bottom of the show. It really helps put this show in front of a new audience, new followers who might be interested in what we're doing here. And go to iHeartRadio. iHeartRadio, you can follow there as well as do the presets, so you can make it your number one podcast there. Appreciate the support and the followership there. As I start off the top of the show, I mentioned Taylor Schmitz, who you guys have heard from quite a bit here on the Roundup and our quarterly federal policy updates. He has been promoted to senior vice president of the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation. A big congrats to Taylor. Um, and also going back to that, I mentioned the big beautiful bill passed. Taylor was on the Hill working very hard, especially on that public lands piece of that bill that was eventually stripped and complete. We will have a special edition of our feature episode that we plan to drop on the off week next week. So we'll be hearing from Taylor talking about that. Also, there's some other ramifications of the big beautiful bill that will affect silencers and what that stripped out of the NFA as far as the cost for that stamp. I believe there's also some implications for farm bill that we'll get some reporting on. So we're not done with any of that stuff, and we got a lot to catch up on. But let's get to the press release here about Taylor and his new position. As I mentioned, we are excited to announce a promotion of Taylor to senior vice president. He's been with CSF for nearly a decade now, and most recently serving as a director of federal relations, a position in which Taylor oversaw and led the federal policy agenda for the organization. In his new role, he will continue to serve as the lead for federal policy while overseeing and managing other key aspects for the organization, including CSF's state program team, marketing and communications, and working alongside senior leadership to expand CSF's strategic fundraising efforts. This quote from Jeff Crane, our president and CEO: CSF recognizes Taylor's accomplishments and leadership in the federal policy arena and are confident that he will excel in his new role as senior vice president. He continues, as an important part of the next generation of conservation leaders, we are looking forward to Taylor's expanded role in strategically leading CSF to more successes on behalf of our fellow hunters, anglers, recreational shooters, and trappers, end quote. During his tenure with CSF, Taylor has further elevated CSF's leadership as the most trusted and respected sportsmen's organization in the policy arena. In 2024, Taylor served as the chairman of the American Wildlife Conservation Partners, a consortium of 52 of the nation's leading hunting, recreational shooting, and other conservation organizations, and was the youngest individual to have served this role. Taylor also regularly testifies on Capitol Hill as an expert witness on pressing issues facing sportsmen and women around the country. Taylor has also received numerous awards within the conservation community, including the 2023-2024 Delta Waterfowl Conservation Leader, and in 2020 was named to the 40 under 40 list by Shot Business. Taylor is also a professional member of the Boone and Crockett Club, North America's oldest conservation organization. This quote from the man himself, Taylor, quote, "I am honored to be stepping into the new leadership role at CSF. Our team at CSF is unmatched in their professionalism, leadership, and passion for our time honored traditions. And I am excited to continue working alongside my colleagues in a new leadership capacity to deliver more wins for sportsmen and women across the country." End quote. In his free time, Taylor is an avid sportsman, particularly enjoying bow hunting, waterfowl hunting, and chasing turkeys in the spring, as well as all types of fishing. There you have it. New senior vice president in the organization. Congrats, Taylor. We're all proud of you and what you're able to do, and look forward to your leadership and seeing all your accolades and bringing us into the future here, as Jeff Crane said, new leadership into the next generation. So congrats. Moving on, the 2025 Oregon legislature adjourns. This from Marie Newmiller. Facing a $500 million revenue shortfall and priorities set by Governor Tina Kotek, the 2025 legislative session in Oregon left little room for sportsmen's issues. Still, CSF fought vigorously to protect hunting, trapping, and firearm rights while advocating for conservation funding to protect Oregon's outdoor heritage into the future. While legislative sessions that are dominated by other unrelated topics can be challenging, CSF remains steadfast in our efforts to protect and advance our time honored traditions. Highlights here: the 2025 legislative session has come to an end as reported. While CSF members and members of the sporting community worked hard to support our traditions and in the space, this session's challenges mean that there remains much work ahead as we continue our efforts to support our community. CSF championed a funding increase for the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife by supporting the agency's budget and working with broad coalition on innovative solutions like the effort to update the transient lodging tax to bolster wildlife conservation. CSF conducted education outreach, coalition strategy, and letters of opposition to amend or remove restrictive bills like House Bill 3932, beaver trapping ban on certain public lands, and Senate Bill 243, a sweeping anti gun bill. CSF also remains committed to continuing our advocacy efforts throughout the remainder of the year, including through the annual legislative fishing trip in September, uh, to share educational information with policymakers to ensure sportsmen's voices shape the future of conservation and heritage policy. As we mentioned at the top, Oregon legislative session constrained by a $500 million revenue shortfall and other priorities set forth by the governor created many challenges for our efforts to advance opportunities for the sporting community. CSF faced early exclusion from firearms legislation discussions, particularly Senate Bill 243, an omnibus package consolidating several other pieces of legislation into one large package. SB 243 banned rapid fire devices, allowed local governments to restrict concealed carry in public buildings, and much more. CSF and our coalition of partners advocated for the removal of the proposal under 21 firearm possession ban that would have strongly impacted youth hunting, shooting sports, and firearm education, but these efforts ultimately proved unsuccessful. Firearms were not the only arena in which sportsmen and women face challenges. The previously mentioned House Bill 3932 which bans beaver trapping on public lands with impaired waterways, was signed into law late last month. CSF's education efforts in connection with the bill highlighted trapping's role in managing populations of species that can have tremendous negative impact on its ecosystem, but the bill's passage underscored the session's challenges. In addition to these efforts, CSF advocated for the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife by supporting the agency's budget and working on innovative funding solutions like updating the transient lodging tax proposed by House Bill 2977 to fund wildlife conservation. These efforts were aimed at ensuring critical resources for healthy fish, wildlife, and habitats, sustaining Oregon's outdoor heritage, but were also ultimately unsuccessful this session. Despite these setbacks, the sporting community remains steadfast. CSF's coalition building continues with the annual legislative fishing trip in September, providing a platform to educate policymakers on hunting, angling, trapping, and the shooting sports. CSF will keep up the fight for sportsmen's heritage and conservation across Oregon. The passage of HB 3932 and Senate Bill 243 highlights the need for persistent advocacy to protect fish, wildlife, and habitats, ensuring Oregon's sporting traditions thrive in the future rulemaking. Yeah, there's some bummers there for sure. And again, right along with Rhode Island, you have another, coastal state taking a whack at Second Amendment rights and access, which is troubling. It again. Christian even mentioned it. A lot of this stuff is copy and paste, and here you go. I mean, this almost feels that same way. The beaver trapping is a huge disappointment, and as covered previously on this show, using states like Massachusetts who have also outlawed the practice. This comes at a huge cost to the state. Um, and you guys have heard me passionately talk on how trappers go out there on their own dime, pay for a license, and do free work essentially for the state for beaver mitigation specifically. As a matter of fact, in New Hampshire, we have a process where a trapper can apply for a wildlife management unit, so public land, to trap that. Now, the condition comes is if with that they get that piece of land for 2 years. They're the only trapper that can be on that wildlife management area, piece of public. But if there are beavers on there or culverts, the trapper must, that's part of the agreement, must trap for those beavers. And it helps the highway department, it helps the engineering, because when these beavers get out there and dam up culverts, I mean, that's a nightmare. And then also, we have examples of homeowners, property owners, specifically folks that advocated for these types of bans. Beavers get on their waterways, dam up, and all of a sudden, some policymakers and others start losing acreage, further, causing property damage, downfall of their property worth. So, like, there's so many implications to this, and then again, costing the taxpayer millions of dollars to bring in, a new licensed trapper professional that you are outsourcing now to a cost that wasn't a cost to you before. Truly unfortunate there in Oregon. Not surprised. We kind of knew this was coming. It's not a good outcome, but comparatively to some of the philosophies Marie and I have talked about earlier this year, as it pertains to um, really this movement across the entire country of isolating beaver specifically as this keystone ecosystem species and all hands off, like that can't happen either. So at least that didn't come of law, but still a bad piece of legislation passed. Let's go over to Jake Gould, who is talking about turkeys and how Great Plains states are responding to falling turkey numbers. Unfortunate. The Why the Matters section here. Turkeys are one of the most popular game species that hunters pursue, with several states offering both spring and fall hunting seasons. However, many states in the Great Plains are experiencing a decline in wild turkey populations. This decline in population has caused state fish wildlife agencies to adjust the number of licenses available, and some have even canceled hunting seasons, which directly impacts the opportunity available for hunters. The past few years, several Great Plains states, sorry for the momentary dyslexia there, have seen a decline in their wild turkey populations. The decline in those populations caused some states, as we said in the beginning, to close seasons, lower the number of tags available, and change how those tags are distributed. State Fish and Wildlife agencies are the entities best suited to make the decisions on the ground there, and it is imperative that they retain their management authority to do so using the best available science. Over the last couple years, some states have begun to see a decrease in their populations. There are several theories why populations have decreased, including loss of habitat, increase in nest predation. The Iowa Department of Natural Resources and the Nebraska Game and Parks Commission are encouraging people to get involved in their summer turkey survey. This is when ideally you're seeing those brood flocks there, hen with their poults, and hopefully you're seeing those in your area. And it's imperative if you do see them to participate in those surveys. You can probably go on to the agency website. Guarantee there's a button there for summer turkey brood survey. Go on there and let them know what's going on. It really helps get a temperature on what's happening with those flocks. Um, management decisions regarding hunting seasons and tag allocations are made in the best interest of turkeys to ensure they are not over harvested. Going back again to those surveys really helps give those wildlife biologists um, the information they need to set those seasons and allocation of tags. In 2023, Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks voted to suspend their fall turkey hunting season due to low turkey numbers. Additionally, Kansas switched the non-resident turkey tag allocation to a lottery system, limiting the number of tags available to non-residents. Kansas continues to study populations to determine when it can sustain a fall hunting season. Nebraska also changed how turkey cat tags are allotted in 2023. Non-resident spring turkey tags are capped at 10,000 on a first come, first serve basis. It is important to note that state fish and wildlife agencies are the entities best equipped to make wildlife management decisions. CSF maintains that it is imperative for the state fish and wildlife agencies to retain their wildlife management authority to carry out America's strong conservation ethic established by the sportsmen and women over a century ago to continue conserving our cherished fish and wildlife resources habitat. Yeah, I will tell you, specifically with Kansas and Nebraska, um, during COVID, during the pandemic there, when we were responsibly recreating that tagline that was pushed out there. Um, Me personally, I went out and took a trip to both those states unknowingly that a whole lot of other turkey hunters were doing so. Um, how you feel about outdoor media or what's on socials? Um, people have their opinions. There was a lot of content. Again, for me at the time, unbeknownst because I wasn't consuming much of it. But there was a lot of coverage of these plain states and the opportunities they presented, especially, as turkey hunters, are looking to do, their US slam, for those subspecies of turkey. Both those states offer opportunity to, harvest Merriams and Rios. There is some inside controversy, amongst turkey hunters on that, but nonetheless, uh, there are there are opportunities for that. So it makes it a very advantageous spot that if you're a traveling turkey hunter, with your own goals of a grand slam and anything else that comes after that, to knock off two subspecies in one state and knock that state off your checklist. So a whole bunch of people inundated those states, and definitely probably contributed to these changes. It definitely did in Nebraska with that lottery because after a few seasons of getting hammered by non-resident hunters, They decided to make that change and control who was coming in. So yeah, you guys know me as a passionate turkey hunter, so I get pretty wonky on this stuff. But it's important, like what they're doing, even though it seems like there's less access in some of these states, are responsible and a responsible community built on integrity too, especially the turkey hunting. You know, when it comes to a challenged population, we should all be raising our hands as the first ones to be like, yo, sound the alarm. We want to see a rebound here. We want to manage the population so that the resource perpetuates and we can have these opportunities and our kids and grandkids can continue to have these great opportunities. So if we got to pull back now to have these better results, that's the responsible thing to do. And that's that integrity check. And, you can talk about it, but when it comes time to bucking up, we got to buck up. So here you are, and certainly, a lot of your fall seasons where they're at, the ability to take both sexes again. Internally in the turkey community, we there is a controversy and around this about especially the taking of hens. um, if you got low populations and you're taking out the ones that are laying the eggs and recruiting the next generation of turkey, kind of hard to sit there and look at being able to take turkeys in the fall, right? And again, there's so much to this, but um, Jake, we appreciate the reporting and hopefully in those states, the solutions being implemented by the professionals on the ground are gonna bear fruit going forward. Finally, and I'll apologize, we're going a bit long here, but we got 2 weeks worth of stuff to catch up on here. An all call for dedicated conservation funding in Tennessee. This from Connor Barker. Connor writes, the North American model of wildlife conservation is regarded as the most successful conservation framework in the world. However, the model is only successful with the necessary funding behind it. For nearly 90 years, the funding has been largely, and in some states exclusively, driven by sportsmen and women through the user pay public benefits structure of the American system of funding. That system consists of a three-tiered funding system that includes revenue from sporting licenses and excise tax revenue from the wildlife sport fish restoration programs. However, many states have now found increased success in supplementing the contributions by sportsmen and women with alternate streams of dedicated conservation funding. This has helped to provide additional funding for state and wildlife agencies to make up budgetary shortfalls so that they may continue to accomplish their critical mission of managing their respective states' natural resources, oftentimes at no additional cost to taxpayers. State fish and wildlife agencies use these dollars to manage species that hunters and anglers find solace in pursuing. Following an initial push to raise hunting and fishing license fees, Tennessee is now the latest state to begin exploring alternate funding mechanisms. Last year, CSF reported on a successful vote, the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission to raise most hunting and fishing licenses by approximately 28%, among other adjustments. On June 18th, the license fee adjustment went before the Joint Government Operations Committee for final review and approval. Following comments from several members of the committee to explore alternative dedicated conservation funding for the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency, uh, that agency executive director, Jason Maxidone, withdrew the previously approved license fee increase in favor of pursuing a dedicated source of funding that does not directly increase costs on the customer. Several different approaches exist to provide critical conservation funding to state fish and wildlife agencies to supplement the contributions of sportsmen and women through the American system of conservation funding. No different than many other aspects of life in today's world, state fish and wildlife agencies must be able to adapt to and adjust to a continuously increasing cost of conducting business for them on the ground conservation work. From increasing inflation, rising staff salaries, providing the equipment needed for day-to-day operations, managing increasing numbers of invasive plant and animal species, and more. Many state fish and wildlife agencies across the nation need additional funding to keep up. Unlike many other state agencies, state fish and wildlife agencies have a long history of being funded by the primary constituency, sportsmen and women, rather than approaching the legislature for general fund monies. On the heels of the committee meeting and following comments from multiple Tennessee state legislators, the attention now turns to exploring mechanisms to fund the state agency and its mission of delivering on the ground conservation for all folks in Tennessee. Several states around the country have unique ways of funding their respective state and fish and wildlife agencies outside of hunting, fishing license sales. A great example is the conservation sales tax, which Missouri successfully implemented and generates over $100 million every year. This modest alternative funding source was a 1/8 of 1% increase in tax applied to all taxable goods. Monies generated from the mechanism are then deposited into account to be expressly used for conservation purposes. Another notable dedicated conservation funding mechanism include dedicated lottery funds for conservation and a dedicated sales tax on outdoor gear. States like Arizona and Minnesota dedicate annually a portion of the lottery proceeds to be used explicitly for conservation funding. Furthermore, a dedicated state level sales tax on outdoor gear can provide a steady flow of conservation funding alongside American system of conservation funding. This method is highly attractive to many states because it stays within the general and improvement successful philosophy of having sportsmen and women as the primary funders of state level conservation in the United States. An example of this in 2018, Georgia passed the Outdoor Stewardship Act, which dedicates up to 80% of existing sales tax collected by sporting goods stores to conservation through the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Program under the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. This program provides a dedicated funding mechanism to support parks and trails and protect the acquired lands critical for wildlife, clean water, and outdoor recreation across the state of Georgia. CSF looks forward to working with the Tennessee agency, the Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus there in Tennessee, and our partners to identify a much needed dedicated conservation funding mechanism in Tennessee. Thank you, Connor, for your reporting. Yeah, it's a tough thing there to go to the primary funders and hat in hand say, "Hey, we need more." And that's just the truth, though. Everything else is going up, um, and those costs they're not immune from it. A lot of states go for years without an increase in fishing licenses and hunting licenses. I believe an example of that is New Jersey, where they are multiple decades um, from not having an increase. Here locally where I live, I think it's an average of 10 to 12 years, maybe. So we go for these long periods of time and not doing it. People get very used to what the cost is. Um, and a modest increase freaks out a lot of people. Um, and it harkens back to telling our story, telling the funding story, telling the Pittman Robinson, Dingle Johnson story of how this whole system works. I think if more people knew that history, knew the current model, there would be more buy-in. We talk about this with wildlife councils too. A modest increase, taking $1 to $1.50 between, Michigan, for example. Um, did that. And some people would just, come unglued about that. But knowing the benefit of that modest dollar over the entire state of all those license sales and what that can do for a marketing campaign to talk to your neighbors who do not hunt, fish, or trap and either have them continue to be um, not caring about what we do or maybe even recruit some support, being indifferent to it, that's a great start and not being co-opted by the propaganda that's out there from the Antichrist. So all this to say, these dedicated revenue streams are needed. They are necessary. And if we can get creative outside of, to Connor's point of going through that exercise of these modest increases that the direct consumer sees when they go to check out for their tags for the year, I think it's an easier pill to swallow. And ironically, those models, the sporting goods in-state tax, we're probably paying more into that system, which is fine with me, and I think most, because it's one of those things that you're not seeing, right? It's like a room and meals tax in where I live. It's like 8% on food, prepared food or stuff, but like you don't see it. It's already baked into the cake. So like you're probably paying more than a $6 increase on your license or your tags. But it's people psychologically get down with it. So look, whatever it is, the issue here being addressed is the agencies need more. They're understaffed. They're not supported financially in most cases. So we got to get creative to support our own, to support the professionals that provide for us, the constituency, the folks that are out there using the resource is the way we do. Leave it there. Guys, thanks for hanging with us on this. It was an extended version of this show, almost going as long as a feature. So again, a lot to catch up on, and thanks for hanging with us. A lot of news. We will bring you a feature episode tomorrow, July 10th, as we do every other Thursday. On that show, we will be covering the breaking news of Sunday hunting and its implications in Pennsylvania and Connecticut. PGC director Stephen Smith will join us, and hoping to, because this is all happening in real time, have some folks on the ground there in Connecticut also weigh in, and we'll have some staff on there as well. And this is great because these are more states that are coming off the roster of non Sunday hunting states. And again, I keep pounding this drum. Massachusetts, Maine, we gotta start having some compromise here, and both of these states provide good models on how to get things done in the sporting community coming together and start chipping away at these antiquated restrictions. So we'll cover that and more tomorrow. Make sure you're going to the website, congressionalsportsman.org, congressionalsportsman.org. There you can sign up for all the free resources. Tracking the Capitals, our print edition or the digital print edition of the Sportsman's Voice. Get all these articles that we're covering every Wednesday. Go to the end article links, do more homework, dive a little deeper, learn more about these policy decisions and these issues, especially, the legislators tuning in. We know you're there, and we appreciate you guys and gals doing so. Use us. We are a resource for you. Have these conversations. If you have follow-up questions, we know somebody that can help you. So we want to be able to do that and provide that information. So again, congressionalsportsman.org, sign up for the freebies, and hoping it helps. We're going to leave it there, folks. We'll see you tomorrow for the feature episode, and then next Wednesday for more news coverage from around the nation. As always, CSF is your inside connection to outdoor legislation. We'll see you next time. So long. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.